Well,
Okay.
welcome and welcome, Alan, particularly. It's a pleasure to see you here, Alan. Doing some exciting stuff in space. So I'm just going to hand over straight to you.
Thanks very much. We've got about half an hour, and then that leaves plenty of time to have a chat and a Q&A. So I'll make a start by sharing my screen, if that's okay. Just click through. It'll take a minute. And with a bit of luck, you'll now be
Perfect.
able to see my screen. Okay. So this is the first talk of the Friday of Yorkshire Sustainability Festival, I believe, having looked at the schedule. So that's quite nice, getting that festival vibe. Always like a bit of a festival morning, getting things started. It's always good, very fresh. Lots to learn, lots to talk about. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. So this is right in the right place with a little help from space. And thanks to um, so just click through to this. This meeting is being recorded. Good. That's clicked. So that seems to be working fine. Okay. So my name's Alan Raw, and I'm a voluntary director at ASP and a steward for ASP for the innovation and technology sector practitioners. So the many around the globe who are working in the technologies and space industry and others. So at ASP, as directors or as the different groups who come together to make it all happen, we take on different roles of different sectors that we're working in and sort of try and steward those and make it relevant and look out for new things that our practitioners need to know. So mine is innovation and technology. And today the ASP team have invited me to talk about my work outside ASP with a look at Pan Galactic. And I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer and a co-founder of Pan Galactic. Just this. So Pan Galactic, we're a team of 6 solution-focused innovators and software developers with a board of passionate advisors, including professionals and senior academics from deep tech, AI, city planning, social prescribing, blockchain, and the space industry. And together, we're developing the future secure operating systems for space, with the challenge of doing this sustainably for the benefit of Earth. Now, this is bringing Earth observation satellites capabilities and blockchain's transparency and certainty to support environmental specialists who are actually doing the work on the ground. So this is what I want to cover. So who we are, our team and partners, the issues we want to address, the solutions that we're working on, why space, why blockchain, why here, how's it all going, and then Q&A and a bit of a chat with yourselves. So let's start then with meeting the team. So we're a small team, there's only 6 of us. Flo is our chief exec. We've got Lawrence, he's the lead on technology. Then there's myself, I'm the sustainability officer. Lee is a multi-award winning artist, including graffiti awards for doing things sustainably in graffiti. He's our creative lead. Then we got Darren, who's our cybersecurity guru, and Jamie, who is he's product lead, marketing, and a fabulous developer. So together we are based out of Hull at C40I Centre for Digital Innovation here in Hull. And then we've got our advisory team. And our advisory team is very much part of the team as well. They've been engaged from the start. They've been incredibly helpful, very generous with their time. And they are part of our developing DAO, which everybody benefits from. So employees, advisors, everyone, so we can all grow everything together. So we've got Tom and Hayne, who are both AI professors, specialists in that at their respective universities. Hayne was at Cornell, but has now moved to a UK university. Then we've got the incredible Sylvia Pervu, Silviu is a lecturer at New York University in space and extreme environments, but he's also a software developer, advisor to NASA and others. And he is a good friend and has been here to Hull, helping us out. And he runs, he fronts Optimal Cities, which is their wonderful project piece of software, which we're partners in. And then Dr. Thais Russamano. She's an expert on health in space and has spent a lot of time on the Vomit Comet, the plane which goes to zero gravity, because she actually developed processes in zero gravity, which would have been impossible without that. So if you want to start somebody's heart again with CPR, not very easy in zero gravity, but she invented the way of doing it. So she's our expert on health. Then we've got Phil Benson, who is founder of UK Black Tech, and he's also based here in Hull. We've got Aaron, who is an expert on social prescribing, but also metaverse and teaching the metaverse. And then Felix, who is our blockchain business guru. But then there's our partners, who are also part of the team. So I'll feature a couple of our partners. Nothing in space tech or sustainability happens without broad partnerships, big partnership working groups. That's just the way it's always been, and it's the only way it's going to work. You've got to involve community in it, and the community isn't just who you're engaging with. You have to be a community as well. That way you can reach common goals, and we're proud to be working so closely with amazing partners, including the PAT Foundation, the Plant a Tree Today Foundation, who are a fabulous charity growing thousands of trees and a wide variety of native companion plants here in East Yorkshire. And we have a base on their site. They grow food for the food banks, they train volunteers, and they work with a lot of veterans retraining as forest rangers and planting and maintaining, which is very important, hundreds of thousands of native trees all over the country. So as PAT Foundation are working alongside us, they're very much engaged in our current project, and we also need to give back to them as well. So as their technology partner, we have developed a new website for them. We've redesigned it, built it, giving them functionality for their volunteers, so the volunteers can have individual accounts and track their training and track their experience. We've built a jobs portal for them, a donation system where they can get their gift aid, and complete bespoke functionality. We've also added another site within their domain. So this is their memorial forest site, which allows people to sponsor a tree for a loved one and donate to the charity and use the gift aid. The site is linked to our blockchain-backed geolocation and monitoring platform, Pan Galactic Forests, on Galactic OS. So as we develop into the future with them, and they do more, and we do more with them, we can be a proper partnership doing this together. So as the technology changes and other things become available, we can add them in, and Pat Foundation charity will get the benefit of them. So speaking of technology partners, our next partner to feature is Optimal Cities. So as presented by Pan Galactic at the Humber Eco Fest in November, with our advisor Silviu Pirvu leading on the stage back in November, he was amazing, engaging with the public here in Hull. Silviu and his co-founders have created an incredible suite of AI and satellite technology within an easy-to-use interface, so anyone can use it. And that gives us the best possible space intelligence to support the PAT Foundation and the team on the ground in doing what they need to do. So Optimal Cities are already tracking flooding and climate change challenges across the world, including their urban plan design that they did for Ho Chi Minh City, and also what they're doing in the California area to do with fires. And they've got projects all over. It's going really well. They're providing a lot of benefit to a lot of people. So on to the next bit, the issues we want to address. There are many, as you can imagine. There is a lot that needs to be dealt with. The clock is ticking for everybody, and some people are blinded by the challenge and the potential outcomes, and some of us are focused completely on the solutions because we've got to turn our climate anxiety into action. The developing polycrisis is accelerating, and we need to use the best sustainability tools we have to address it now. So I suppose that's a bit solar punk of me, but we want to try and refuse dystopia and work with what's available. So satellites are computers in space that run on 24-hour solar power. They are critical in monitoring the global changes in nature. They're incredible tools which are being used right now with a vital role in weather forecasting, observing agriculture, measuring changes in our oceans. We wouldn't have known about the record-breaking heat spots in the North Sea last year without them. However, they're not being fully utilised by conservationists because there's more work needs to be done about making it accessible so people can use these tools. There are current threats to these satellites, and blockchain is the best solution. But the original chains that are just ledgers, really, they have a big footprint, an unacceptable footprint. So they too are another challenge. And they're also an underutilized resource for people who care about their energy consumption. But they are the best solution if we can come up with a different way. So we're taking on two challenges there, space and blockchain, as areas that need development. So what are we doing about it? Let's talk about solutions. The solutions that we're working to develop. So firstly, we are project managing a pilot partnership. It's a project in North Yorkshire, East Yorkshire, and Hull and Holderness. The planting team at PAT are working with us. Optimal Cities and other partners are leading in their areas on it, using wearable devices to track physical and mental health of the volunteer planters. This data will assist in informing social prescribing and place-based impact. If you don't know what I mean by place-based impact, if, for example, you were a 21-year-old in the centre of a city at a bar that had very loud music on and lots of people there, you might be having a fantastic time and think it's the best place in the world. If you were perhaps a night worker or somebody who lives on different hours, who's 75, perhaps with some difficulty sleeping through your dread of climate change, perhaps, or anything else that keeps you awake at night, and you lived above the bar, you might not think it was such a good thing at all, and you might not be having such a good time. One place, two different people, two different impacts. So using the wearables and the tracking that we have with the satellites and the other support from ESA, we can actually do proper, real place-based impact assessment. So is it good for you to be out in nature planting trees as a volunteer? How do you know? And is one place equal to another? Well, this way, we're not reliant on the old model building system of before. This is real people, real stats, real time. So using Optimal Cities spatial intelligence, that powers this as well. And back in November of last year, I think it was November, late last year anyway, there was the UN Science Summit, and Silvio got up there and showed them the models that he'd made of the whole area for Optimal Cities to work with us. And he gained great support for Optimal Cities through doing that, which was great for what he's doing and brilliant for the people here and everything that we want to do as well. So let me show you a little bit of what it does. Now, I asked Silvio the other day if he would maybe narrate something and go through it, and here he is.
Placing the right tree in the right place should not take weeks, days, or even hours. you should be able to decide in minutes. With optimal cities, you have a preloaded calibration showing what are the priority areas where those trees can be planted based on multiple factors, such as areas where the soil is not barren, where you have some vegetation health enough to sustain the trees, where the moisture is not too high but not too low either, and also having additional considerations such as closeness to schools and prioritizing areas with the most respiratory system risk levels. You can also add additional parameters such as distance to GPs, close to GPs, or even prioritizing areas where the population is not served well by healthcare facilities. So in that way, you can filter and prioritize areas that are deprived of existing facilities. And those filters are dynamic and based on accessibility analysis as well as land parameters from satellites. You can remove those filters and can also explore other options and check different layers separately. So in that way, you can have a wider understanding of the area. With optimal cities, you can check valuable information about vegetation health, the properties of the soil, such as soil moisture, and barren soil. You can also understand accessibility to key facilities such as healthcare facilities, education facilities, and if there are any risk factors converging in different areas.
So there you go. That is our Sil view, telling you all about that. It's an incredible tool. They've developed amazing things, working with satellites with NASA, JAXA, European Space Agency, private companies, really bringing it all together with their AI and all of the data on the ground from NHS and government to make a solution for urban planning and for green corridors and for doing simple things like looking at the situation and thinking, right, well, the school's here and the people are living over here and there is a high rate of respiratory problems and they've got to walk from there to the school and they walk down the side of a major road and there's nothing between them and it. It's obviously that's where the planting needs to be happening. So it's just simple things like that. So that's the main sort of parts of that particular project. But let's zoom out to see the wider view of the Pan Galactic Forest project, addressing the double counting, under-evidenced, under-regulated, inset and offset planting phenomenon that we're living with. Where are the trees? How do you know? Are they still alive? And who's looking after them? Can you prove it right now? And can you confidently enjoy nurturing your tree family as it grows to protect us all in the future? To change all of those questions into yeses, we're developing Pan Galactic forests. So it's our application. It documents each tree that's planted as it's put into the ground. Indelibly recording it and geo-hashing it, so that's a geo-hash location, and a photograph of each tree with the metadata of what species, genus it is, the maturity of the tree as it goes into the ground, the future maintenance plan, which is very important to keep the tree alive, and who's going to do that and when. This data is then trackable and can be closely monitored to give each plant the best chance of surviving. It informs the new models and where to plant next and what else is needed. Because, of course, when you plant things into the ground, it breaks up the ground. The ground will then obviously absorb more water, so it reduces the risk of flooding. Whereas barren land, the water will just go straight over it and not soak into it. And we do have issues with flooding, especially where we're based. A bit more about that later, I guess. So the benefits of the system that we have, it's intelligent planting supported by our partners with data modeling on the correct species to plant in the optimal place. Simple as that, really. It's for biodiversity net gain, carbon sequestration, climate change effect mitigation. It gives us that data, certainty of offset and biodiversity net gain, backed by proofs recorded on a blockchain, indelible and transparent. It gives it traceability, and we can do intelligent monitoring. So stage 1 is assessment. So we can use the satellites and Earth observation to see where the issues are, where would be a good place to plant to put the right tree in the right place. Then we can take action with our partners like Pat Foundation and actually put those trees in the ground and maintain them going forward. Tokenize each tree, recording it with all the information that needs to be with that particular individual living thing so that it can be looked after. Have a platform that everyone can use, so they can do things like, if they are a person who has sponsored those trees or an organization who's invested in those trees, they can just view a real-time record of where that is. Now, they might want to have some trees in one planting scheme, but that planting scheme might be full, and then there's another one that's also maybe based in the community that they're based in, and they want to support that because they can see there's a need, so they want to plant some there. Well, that's okay, because it brings it all together as a virtual forest for them on their own platform. So they have their own account, they can see all of their trees in all the different places together as one forest. That way they can track it, they can see how healthy it is, and if somebody says to them, could you give us a report on your ESG, can you tell us what you're doing? They don't have to say, yeah, I'll try, I'll get that from somewhere, I'll believe somebody. They can just say, yeah, I'll show you it now. Just bring it up. But also we can gamify it a little bit as well, so it can have a bit of a leaderboard about who's doing good things, and it can make donations to the charity with the gift aid to support the work continuing. So then it's about tracing. So then this information goes back up to the satellite goes into the data, so it goes into the database, satellite can then track, and we go back to the beginning again, so that the satellites can show us the health of the vegetation and look at what is the next problem, what is the next thing we need to be tackling, and on and around we go. So this is based on our platform, which we're developing, which is Universal Quantum Safe Operating System for Space Technology. So it's called Galactic OS. And it's got sustainability as a priority, and it's customizable to each organization, and it enhances the collaboration and the partnership work. So that's pretty much it. It's like a circular system for looking after everything, really. You assess it, you take the action, you record that, you then upload the data, you then track it, and then you use that to inform the model to then assess the situation, see what the need is, take the action, and around we go. So on to the next section of what I said I'd tell you, and that is why. So why space, why blockchain, why now, and why here? So why space? Well, it's full of tools, very valuable ones. Average person uses just over 40 satellites a day. They tend not to know they're doing it, but they do. If you get a train or a bus, or go down a traffic system that's got like a motorway, or if you use your own sat nav or your mobile phone, or you go to a supermarket, you're accessing satellites and using those, because none of those functions, none of those systems work without them. And people do often overlook the fact that when they're watching telly, they're using a satellite as well, generally. And space does push innovation forward. It has a lot of issues of its own that it needs to deal with, and I spend a lot of time in space sustainability meetings talking about these things. Like on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, I'll be at the UK EONS event, which is Earth Observation Network for Sustainability at Newcastle Uni, where we'll be talking about all of this and how we can make these tools more sustainable and more accessible. So satellites, they're vital to us tackling climate change, in my opinion, because they monitor vegetation health, sea temperature, algae bloom, animal population and migration, ice, wildfires, weather events, air pollution, and a lot more. So why blockchain? Well, all of those assets I just mentioned are at risk. Blockchain is currently the best kind of encryption. Quantum will change all of that. So we're building a post-quantum secure blockchain. Blockchains have a big footprint, it needs challenging. We've developing a new way of doing that and using space technology. As you know, satellites are computers in space with 24-hour solar. Well, that helps. And blockchain is just a ledger. It's just like a spreadsheet. It's just somewhere to keep the data. But the difference is you can't change it. And when you add to it, you can see who added to it and when. So it gives accountability when it's transparent. So why now? Time's running out. We all know this. This is why we're at a sustainability festival, because we know all of this. Preaching to the choir if I tell you more about that. But the UK government wants to be a leader in blockchain. Well, let's do that in a sustainable way then, shall we? And there is a rapid rate of growth in this area, and we want to make sure that's done right as well. And then why here? Well, our home base for Pan Galactic is in the most vulnerable place in the UK for climate change. We produce over a third of the CO2 for the UK here in the Humber, not something that we're proud of. So we should do something about it. The majority of the population here lives in a kind of bowl-shaped area around 4 local authorities, which are the lowest lying area in the UK of this kind of population, and Hull's between 2 rivers. And it isn't just about the tide rising towards us, it's also the fact that we drain a large area, a big percentage of the UK as well, from all the high land around us into those rivers. And that won't go anywhere if that water gets deeper. There's been lots of estimates about how long we've got before this entire area is underwater. I'm going to buy some taller Wellington boots. I think it's going to happen quicker. And yeah, I'm going to need a bigger boat. How's it going is the next section, I suppose. Well, although I will point this out. Yeah, so we do have, we are trying to do this properly. We're a UK limited company. We have been very keen to join up with all of the people who can assess us, monitor us, make sure we're doing things right. We support ASP and we're members of ASP, and we enjoy and learn from ASP, from the international community. As I said, we're panelists at UK EONS, and we are founders of the European Space Agency Centre for Economics and Commerce. But also you'll notice on there about the RSA, which we're members of, fellows of. And along with Sylvia, who I mentioned earlier from Optimal Cities, Thais, our advisor for health in space, myself and our CEO Flo, we're all fellows of the RSA and co-founders of the new RSA Space for Space. And that is a think tank. It's the 270th anniversary of the Royal Society of Arts, Commerce and Engineering. So we've started a new think tank, and it's for talking about creatively within the values of the RSA, creatively coming up with space for regeneration, prosperity and health. Expect events in July for that at RSA House in London. How's it going then? Well, we've just won Business to Business Startup of the Year for the North East Yorkshire and the Humber, which we're very pleased with. We're finalists in the National Award and UK Space Tech Startup of the Year and Innovation Startup of the Year. So I guess we're doing all right. I'm hoping that some of those can help financially with the things we want to do, because so far we've paid for everything ourselves. We've not had any funding or investment or anything from anywhere else. We just wanted to push it forward ourselves, not get into debt. But now a grant would be handy. So now over to you, Q&A. Let's have a chat. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, you keep talking about all this, but that was a phenomenal overview. It's amazing to see it all coming together. It's happened relatively quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've only been going just over 2 years, and yeah, I only left the BBC in November to go full-time Pan Galactic after 21 years there. So yeah, we're a startup. It's just getting going. We just finished our second accelerator with the UK Space Agency. So we did the Explore program. We finished the Leo program this coming week. And that's been really useful for us because they've pulled apart everything we're doing, thrown loads of questions at us, and told us what's possible and what's not possible, and you scrutinized everything, and we needed that because otherwise it'd just be a dream and we wouldn't actually be making a difference.
Cool.
So we, now we can actually crack on, which is really good.
Well, I'm sure there's lots of questions here. We didn't actually go around and introduce ourselves. So when you ask a question, if you just say, where you're from physically and what organisation, and then pop your question. Yeah. So open floor for anyone to ask the questions.
I've got loads.
One at a time, Simon.
Great. Let's
Great,
let's talk.
So it's fascinating. Absolutely. I'm really optimistic in terms of potential. I can see loads of connections with stuff. I suppose an idea of the scale of kind of the Galactic OS as it stands at the moment in terms of who you've got engagement with, because even just thinking of the stuff I've stepped into recently in terms of just putting my head into the sustainability world, kind of organizations like Make It Wild that have got a number of kind of small reforestation and planting and kind of curation of areas of land is kind of where all of those partnerships could be. Either it's organizations that are already doing it with some sort of tree memorial stuff, or even just local communities that might want to pick this up and go, we've got some areas that we could potentially go out and buy. Any and all of that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's loads of projects going on all over the world, all over the UK, many of them quite small, which could do with some useful tools that they could all use that feed into one shared pot of data, so we can get a better idea of what impact they all have together and where the need still lies, so we know where we're planting next and where we're hitting next. There's a real range of them, though. Some of them are purely forestry. They're just tree planting schemes.
Yeah.
Others recognize the need for biodiversity net gain for financial reasons. Others recognize the need because the trees aren't going to stay alive without it, and and more importantly, the wildlife isn't. So there has to be companion planting. That has to be done with ecological knowledge. So there's an awful lot of intelligence has to be brought together to do this right. There's nothing wrong with any of the schemes. They're all great, but if they were all done to create actual ecosystems, and one big one, that would be brilliant. So at the moment, all we've really been doing is engaging with as many people as we can and saying, what are you doing? Will this help? And linking things together. Now, our partners have been really generous, but also really proactive. So Pat Foundation have been doing things all over the world, but they're based here in the UK, based in Yorkshire, so they've done more here than anywhere else, but they have planted forests all over the place. And so by empowering them, building their website for them, adding new capability to it, making sure they get the gift aid on donations, by backing them up, that increases the bit that's missing from a lot of what's already been going on. So if, for example, you take an insurance company who recognises the importance of biodiversity net gain, maybe so do banks. Then there's the people in the community on the ground who recognise the importance of it. And they may be able to get funding from those banks, and businesses may be able to get support for doing better on their BNG from those financial institutions. But I'm not sure any of them know who can actually deliver the trees that are grown properly, that are natively grown. I don't think many of them know actually who's going to be able to put those trees in the ground, and more importantly, who's going to maintain them afterwards, and what's supposed to be done there. So it's about bringing that knowledge together. And Pat Foundation are absolute experts at that. So, for example, they're currently, I think, if they're watching, forgive me for getting this detail wrong, but it's somewhere along the lines of 180 veterans, mainly Marines, who they are retraining as forest rangers to teach them how to do this maintenance and deploy them where it's needed to back up other projects like Humber Forests and other groups who are doing amazing work. Does that answer any of that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, puts a little bit more flesh on the bone in terms of detail. I guess
Okay.
I'm already thinking ahead in terms of what would an onboarding process be? What would the minimum requirement be from an organisation in terms of size or commitment from people or money or funding? Kind of probably a few steps ahead of where you're currently at. The other
Yeah,
question,
I guess it is. Yeah.
the other question I had,
I guess we just need to have meetings with them, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. So my other question was specifically around the carbon footprint of blockchain and what that looks like. What's the carbon footprint of a tree planted through this scheme? if you look at the whole circle piece.
Yeah, well, it's pretty complex, which is why we're using blockchain and recording the metadata so it can actually record it. There is a real lack of transparency and reporting and knowledge when it comes to that world of carbon offsets and things. So it depends on what tree, what species, what genus of tree you are planting, because trees grow to different sizes in different environments and sequester different amounts of carbon. They're not all the same. And there's a size and a maturity at which they go into the ground, which can be different depending on, you know, who's planting it and when and everything else. And then it will sequester more carbon as it grows because it's getting bigger and it's got more leaves and it's gonna do more work. And then it gets to a maximum size, and that's different for every tree. And then it'll stay like that size and continue to do its job for a period of time. And then eventually it may not be doing as much of that, but it will still be providing a habitat for things to live in. So it's then serving a different purpose and will also be providing nutrients to other trees which are growing up. So it's very hard to measure with cold sort of mathematics what good a tree is doing, because you'll always be underestimating it because it does things that we don't even understand yet. But what we're doing is, by working with Pat, we know what tree is going in the ground, and then we record the genus of that. And then we know how big it is when it goes in the ground. So we know where the scale is starting. And then with constant maintenance and making sure it hasn't been eaten by deer at that point, we can see how big it gets. And then using the satellites, we can see the health of that vegetation and monitor it from then on. So then you can start to measure and give details of actually how much carbon that is absorbing. And also, if you put you can't put trees too close together. So what a lot of the schemes have tried to do is put a lot of trees in to a piece of land which isn't big enough, and it doesn't work, because what you end up is you end up with darkness underneath, where nothing will grow and nothing lives. So they've got to be at least 5 meters apart, so which means you can't get as many trees in. So really, we just need more land. So we need to record those figures. We need to show that carbon sequestration. We need to show that. Otherwise, no one's going to give us more land because they need to get something financially out of it. So yeah, it's a very complicated thing, and it depends entirely on what you're growing, which is why we're using blockchain for that. And you mentioned about the carbon footprint of blockchain. So the way that works is, blockchain itself is just software, but for it to calculate to build the blocks, for it to do its hashes, to build the blocks and make the decisions on a decentralized network, you need loads and loads of computers, because that's the beauty of it, in that if one goes down, it makes no difference because there's another, which gives you that decentralized security. You need a lot of computers, and if they're here on the ground in traditional ways, unless they're, you know, somewhere like Iceland where they're using volcanic energy to power them, what happens is you're using loads of energy, and the energy mainly is going into keeping them cool. So where there's like these big servers in countries where they've got warehouse-sized servers for current blockchain systems, the most of the energy is going on, you know, fans to cool them down. So looking at that element of it, the temperature and how that works, having nodes in space where it's 24-hour solar and there is no convection, so a fan will do you no good whatsoever. Geothermals works differently in space, so you have to actually radiate the heat, but you're not creating any emissions at all. So our plan is having a constellation of optically linked nodes, creating a server in space, but also having a terrestrial traditional blockchain on the ground, but only working on renewables. So no one can have a node unless they've got monitored renewable energy as the power source for it. And then that links to the backup system on the server that's optically linked on the satellites. And that way, the data we're getting from the satellites of what's happening on the ground, that is what we need, actually stays in space, and we draw it down from the server in space. That's what we're building. And that's how we get past this footprint problem of blockchain.
Incredible. Emily, Will, any questions?
I've got a couple, if that's okay. Would you want to go first, Will?
You go for it. You go for it.
Well, one thing was an observation. I'm reading Reconnection at the moment by Miles Richardson, and he says quite a lot in the book about not having data about well-being in different spaces. And I didn't know if you were in touch with him, or just in relation to the pilot that you're doing about place-based impact. And I didn't know how that might kind of feed into what he's doing on Connection. So that was just observation.
I don't think I'm directly in touch, but that doesn't mean the team isn't.
Yeah.
Because they may be. So we're members of the Connected Places Catapult and the Satellite Catapult, and all of those organisations that are working together. Connected Places particularly is doing that kind of work. But we're very much at pilot stage. So we're just at the point of wearables going on wrists and people going out and planting the trees and us collecting the data. So, but give it a couple of months and we'll have something useful that everyone can make use of in that way. And we can, sort of inform the work that's going on. There is some amazing people doing amazing work to try and make this, make everybody safer and healthier and happier. And it is things like what Optimal Cities are doing, where they can actually see what people need to do in a day. So if you do have pulmonary problems and you're in an area where the satellites can see it's very high air pollution, and the satellites can also see that there's very little vegetation, then you can see there's a need there. And if it's air pollution and there is a major company in that area that's got lorries going up and down that road, then maybe it should be part of their social responsibility to be backing that planting. So it's a way of bringing all of that data together and using the wearables to make it real to each person, not just a model.
And then I was also recently I was at a talk and somebody was, sorry, these were really quite left-wing questions, but somebody was talking about Sheffield Council and the fact that they planted a whole load of trees, and after 10 years they took them all down and replanted them again because of and the reason was insurance. And I wondered whether that's a problem that you'd come across that Pat had in relation to insurance or not, because that seemed to be a barrier to the maintenance companies keeping trees for more than 10 years, when obviously they're like still toddlers, the trees, but they haven't come.
No, it's not an issue that Pat have ever fallen foul of. It's about choosing the right tree and choosing the right place in the first place before you go sticking them in the ground. I think that's the important thing. So you need to be knowing that the land that you are planting the trees on is for that, and that if then a tree becomes apparently unsafe, unsafe to who? Unsafe to what? If it's falling down in the middle of a woodland that's designed for developing biodiversity, that's not unsafe. That's fertilizer.
I don't think the trees were unsafe. The maintenance contractors could only get insurance for 10 years for maintenance for those trees. So maybe because they're a different kind of organisation, they don't have it. But I just thought, wow, that's they're probably doing that all over the place. Maintenance contractors taking down trees after 10 years, and they're only planting, I don't really know much about male and female trees, but also only planting male trees, which I suspect that municipalities not doing because they're easier
No.
to look after, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so this is what I was saying before about there being different schemes and different ways of doing things. And it's great that all of them are putting trees in the ground. This is good and that they're growing, but no, there's different ways of doing things. And what we're looking at is actually developing the biodiversity and not just having male trees, for example, or not just having trees
To
that
look
are being
nice.
maintained in a particular way to look nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is about maintaining those trees to keep them alive.
And then my last question was just about when you were talking about you were saying about risk to the space data and that blockchain was the answer to that. And are we talking about cybersecurity there, like people being able to change data that's coming from space?
Yeah. So satellites are computers in space, and computers get hacked. And these satellites are eyes that are seeing the ground and everything that goes on. And so they hold valuable data and transfer valuable data that other people can change. So, for example, if you sent a text message to a loved one, you're using a satellite, you're sending a piece of data, and it's going to a satellite, it's then going to your loved one. And if somebody in between changes the message, you're not going to feel too good about it, and neither is your loved one. If that was not going from between you two, but was actually going between two governments, that would make a massive difference. And if it was going between two safety organisations, like two disaster relief organisations and perhaps a country that needs the support, then they're not going to get the support. It's very important to make sure that the data stays true. Now, at the moment, a lot of people are using RSA. It's very easily, it is being hacked on a constant basis. It keeps popping up in the news that stuff is getting hacked. Quantum is arriving. Russia and China have already shared things between each other by satellite using quantum. People are using it. It is there now. Currently, the most powerful encryption in the world is blockchain, SHA-256 encrypted, and that's on elliptical curve. At the moment, it would take centuries to crack it. When quantum really takes off, which is imminent, it will take minutes. And all of the current blockchain encryption organizations, it would take them years to back engineer their system. And so we're building a post-quantum secure system from the start. And that's the only way forward, I think. We want the supply chains that these things are monitoring to be true. That's it. Trusted, true, transparent. And when you've got so many different political bodies and different actors all having to trust each other for what's going on politically and in space, it helps to have a neutral system, which you don't have to trust it. You just can't fake it. That's what we're trying to secure.
Thanks, Emily. Well, over to you, sir.
I actually don't have any questions, Alan. I will watch the first. I'm really sorry I was late. I got a phone call from my finance director, and I thought it'd be 15 minutes, and then 3/4 of an hour later, I'm like, that was a longer call than I anticipated. But it's so interesting what you're doing. Really, really interesting, and it affects us in sustainability massively, and which is why I joined. And I've been really rubbish at joining ASB calls. I know I have. It's around child time is usually when they are. but yeah, thank you, and I will watch the first half. But
that's all right. That's why ASP works the way it does. Between us all, we all hold the information, and then we make a point of sharing it with each other, don't we? And as we go forward, so
Cool.
don't worry that you
I've got a couple of questions about optimal cities. It was launched last year in the Humber EcoFest, and launched to the public and also to the council. I just wonder, what's the take-up been within the local authorities in using it? Humber region.
I'll be kind and say minimal. It hasn't yet really, well, it hasn't been taken up. So, but that's okay because we're now project managing. So Pan Galactic is project managing the work happening anyway, with Pat Foundation and Optimal Cities. So we've got together, we are cracking on. So we've got an area in North Yorkshire, an area in Holderness, part of Hull and East Yorkshire, where we've got our planting schemes happening and the wearables being are going on wrists, and it's happening anyway. Optimal Cities, thanks to that amazing presentation at the UN General Assembly from Silvio, we've got some backing from European Space Agency to pay for those wearables to go on those wrists and that data to be collated by that team. So it's going to happen regardless of whether or not there's any support there.
Well, I think, as we all know, the councils have got enough challenges at the moment financially. So,
Yeah, they've got
but
a
it's
lot.
there
Yeah.
available for them when they need it, basically. I've got a
Absolutely. I
question.
think, well, we just got to prove it works first. We've just got to show that it works, and we've got to prove there's a benefit to it. And then the council, can maybe spare somebody to take their eye off the current solutions which they're struggling to implement, and go, right, well, let's try a bit of that one as well.
Cool. Emily, I've just got a question for you after our lengthy conversation yesterday. What does this look like to you from the financing perspective, from investment perspective?
Well, I'm quite interested in biodiversity net gain and biodiversity credits, so I can definitely, and we kind of do look at the crossover of sustainability and blockchain and digital quite a lot. So I can definitely see that this, like, people having the end point being where people have a dashboard and they can see exactly in a verified true way what they've got, and they can, because what businesses want if they're buying biodiversity credits is they just want to be able to prove that what they've bought is genuine and actually doing something, and that's really difficult. But if this kind of software would give them comfort and help them to do that, if in relation to planting trees, because I think, as all the problems that you've already described about planting trees, about people not, like, it's one thing to plant them, like whether or not you're looking after. I'm thinking about changing my sponsorship of Tree Sisters now to Pat. So it's just what my tree my tree allegiance is. But yeah, I think that I can see, like, in other situations similar things happening, like with eDNA and mangroves and testing water and things like that on different projects. I can see that it would be really, commercial companies will pay for it probably as part of their package for biodiversity credits if the biodiversity credit market ever gets off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that we can sort of go beyond the desire to be able to show and record and report and everything, and actually get to the point of celebrating. It'd be nice if those who need to do that can not just say, here's a report on our biodiversity net gain. It'd be nice if they could, celebrate what they've done on one platform and say, look, this is great. Everyone should be doing this. We're going to do some more of it. And know that they're nurturing these plants going forward, and that those plants are actually living things that are going to save us.
And
We want to get to that.
There are examples. So I've seen work with the wildlife trusts where they're like planting temperate rainforests and things like that, and where companies have invested money in the beginning over the long term, and I could see that they would use it to, like, the idea is not necessarily, it's to actually do the project, but the side benefit is getting credits down the line. And I could see that people want to be able to, they have to be able to show their impact, like from a reporting point of view. That's what they have to be able to show, and that's what they will be criticised for not being able to show. And then hopefully after, they will celebrate it as well. But I think then mostly at the moment it's like, oh, everyone's going to sue us.
Yeah, there's some work that Tim Freneau is doing in looking at how can we create an appropriate finance mechanism for essentially the world we're trying to create. which doesn't fit into the normal funding criteria. And the one thing that's coming out of that is that, well, investors love investing in infrastructure, you know, roads, railways, airports, etc., ports, cycle lanes even. But they don't seem to, we're not talking about nature as an infrastructure. It is the infrastructure that supports all life on Earth. And maybe if we start using that terminology, it resonates more, because it's an investment, i.e. there's a return in infrastructure which supports the economy, society, etc. And I think then people might start getting it, that it's not just some green idea and it's not just a cost, it's actually investing in the infrastructure of the future. It's called nature. And that sort of dialogue shift might change people's perspectives and initial reactions to these sort of projects.
And from my perspective, I see like infra funds, and I read on something, or I was at something, and they said that infra funds actually take a slightly lower commercial return often than other funds. So that is also maybe a meeting of investment criteria that there is, because obviously nature from a financial point of view doesn't normally have like the massive 7, 8, 9% return that funds might be looking at currently, because they only measure most of them only measure financial returns. So that might be, I think infra funds take a lower return because they don't generally have, they're a different kind of project and they're more long term like nature as well. So there could be some.
Is that because they don't see that the investment in nature is actually underpinning all their other investments and making those work better? Maybe they don't see that link.
They just don't. Most funds don't understand nature. They don't take into account natural capital as part of the value. They just measure, and most funds measure financial return as their value. Some funds and impact funds really, the first thing, if it's an impact fund, the first thing they think about is the impact they're going to make, the outcome. And the second thing they think about is the financial return, which they do have to have because they're a business and they need to be able to reinvest. And they might have a slightly longer term focus as well because of the type of things they're investing in. And then there's this other overlay on top, which is the European legislation for funds about SFDR. And then a lot of the funds who do impact investing find that they actually don't fall then into the sustainability definition for SFDR. And so there's a mismatch there as well, which is problematic, because if you're doing something which is good for the world and you're a fund, you probably want to say, oh, look, I've labeled it ESG or sustainability or impact, which it's more difficult for them to do. So that's a kind of infrastructure problem.
This is why we've sort of focused a lot on health. You'll notice there was quite a bit of talk of health in that as well. And that is because human health and nature health, we are nature. Nature's part of us, we're part of it. Human health doesn't exist without natural health. Natural health and human health are the same thing. So by focusing on the health element with the wearables, for example, we're able to get sort of show impact in that way. So there are models to say that it is good for our physical and mental health to be in nature, healthy nature. But is that the same for everyone? Do we know for sure? Can we track it in real time? Is everything equal? Well, this is about people in places. So if we can prove that this is the case using the real data, then it isn't just about social prescribing for people. It's actually like social prescribing for nature. So it's we're prescribing that nature must remain healthy because it's so linked. Basically, it is our health.
Well, we have run out of time, but that was lots of interesting questions there. Alan, thank you very much for that. It's been super hearing about all that and getting, for the first time, a real overview of the systemic approach you're taking to this and the interconnectedness of everything. That's really impressive. Simon, Will, Emily, thanks very much for your thoughts and questions today. This will be recorded and put up in the next couple of days. So thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks,
Thanks very much.
Alan.
Appreciate that.
Thanks
mate.
everybody.